This is Bob Maranto, managing partner of Andrews Bernstein Maranto, continuing our discussion regarding injuries that you may sustain or see if you've been involved in a motor vehicle accident, particularly to the spine. I'd like to talk to about some of the different tests that are available to identify and determine what the nature and extent of the injuries are. Initially, everyone knows that you can have an x-ray, and that's kind of the front line of treatment. When x-rays are taken, it only shows the bone. The area in between the vertebral bodies isn't picked up on an x-ray because it's soft tissue. X-rays only pick up bone. Well, other things but bone, for sakes of this discussion, bone. And the reason that happens in the hospital is because the hospitals need to rule out that you fractured that bone. Because you can imagine if you fracture this bone and a piece of it lodges into the cord, which is right there, then we could have catastrophic problems. Very, very rare that happens, but they need to rule it out. The second line of defense when determining injuries to the spine would be a CT scan, not used that often because the MRI is a much better diagnostic tool to determine pathology. In a previous video, we talked about EMG NCV tests. Those EMG NCV tests determine if there's been any type of injury to the peripheral or exiting nerve root. There is also a test called a digital motion X-ray, DMX. And DMX is actually an X-ray, just like the ones that shows the bone, but it's able to be done fluidly. In other words, it's doing pictures, multiple pictures, as the person is moving. And this is typically only used in the neck. And it's not depicted in any of these models, but ligaments hold bone to bone. And in between these vertebral bodies, which are bone, there are things called longitudinal ligaments. And you can imagine that I liken a ligament to a rubber band that's holding two pieces of bone together. And sometimes when people have an injury, and you can't see, by the way, those longitudinal ligaments on an x-ray. When people have those types of injuries, the rubber band will expand, will stretch. And normally it stretches back. But if it doesn't stretch back, you start having ligamentous laxity. In other words, one of the pieces that's holding the two pieces of bone together is no longer holding it tightly. And what a DMX does, or the digital motion X-ray does, is it allows people to extend and flex as the picture is being taken. And what we see in that situation is that there's supposed to be a normal movement of the neck. So as you flex, it's supposed to do this. And as you extend, it's supposed to do this. And when a DMX is used and this digital motion X-ray is used, it really is dynamic. And if you see it, you would understand what I'm talking about. You will actually see the vertebral bodies, instead of doing this and flexing all together, you will see the vertebral bodies actually shift. So instead of folding, it moves forward, almost like it's sliding over each other, and then the extension comes or the flexion comes. And this is important because if we know that there's ligamentous instability there, it can account for why you're having pain. It can also account for why you're having difficulty with motion, and it's also can account for the reason why you're having spasming in that area because the vertebral bodies are no longer working properly.